I never thought I'd receive a fraud alert message from the very person who gave birth to me. It all started on what seemed like a perfectly normal morning, until I saw my bank balance had dropped to exactly 4 zeros. Not a system error. Not some random thief. The only person who could have done this was my mother. She had stolen everything I'd saved over nearly 10 years, and vanished, like she never existed. But what truly knocked the air out of my lungs was the letter she left on the kitchen table, handwritten in that all-too-familiar script. So neat, so fake it made my skin crawl. My name is Evelyn Scott, 31 years old, a financial analyst in Boston. Numbers have always been my safe world, logical, honest, and never betraying. Unlike people. That morning I was working at my little kitchen nook, coffee long since gone cold. My phone kept buzzing, but I barely glanced at it. "Unusual activity on your account," said a notification from the bank. I swiped past it, thinking I'd check later. A deadly mistake. Then I saw it. A payment invoice in my email from a 5-star hotel in Miami. A place I'd never even been. My heart slammed like someone had punched me in the chest. I immediately opened my banking app, my eyes locked onto the screen, refusing to believe what they were seeing. $0. Checking account, $0. Savings, $0. Emergency fund, also $0. Every last cent. $325,000. Saved. Over nearly a decade. Gone like vapor. I shot up from my chair, heart pounding, hands shaking as I frantically scrolled through recent transactions. First-class airfare. Luxury shopping. Michelin star restaurants. Spas. Hotel chains. Not mine. Couldn't be mine. And then I saw the first familiar name. Susan Scott. My mother. In that moment, part of me wanted to scream. Another part just wanted to collapse. We hadn't lived together since I was 19. The relationship was never great, but lately, I'd started to open up again. After her minor stroke, I lent her a key to my apartment. I even gave her my safe's PIN, thinking she might need some emergency cash. Stupid. I was so stupid. I called her 3 times. 4. Straight to voicemail every time. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my coat and drove like a zombie. Her apartment was about 30 minutes away. I drove like I could still salvage something. An explanation. A sign I'd misunderstood. But no. The door was locked from the outside. I called out. No answer. The mailbox. Empty. And then I saw it. A folded envelope placed neatly on the kitchen table, like she wanted me to find it. I recognized the handwriting instantly. That slanted, old-fashioned script she always used for Christmas cards. Every letter rounded, ceremonial, like a prayer. But now, it just made me sick. My dearest Evelyn. By the time you read this, I'm probably halfway across the world. I'm sorry. I needed a new beginning. A second chance to live the way I've always wanted. I hope one day you'll understand. Love. Ma. I clenched the letters so hard the paper crumpled in my palm. Understand? She emptied my life savings. Disappeared. And left behind a flowery note like this was some cheap paperback novel? I screamed, a raw, throat-tearing scream. The cold apartment stayed silent, save for the quiet whirring of the ceiling fan. Mocking me. If it had been a stranger, I might have been able to forgive. But this was my mother. I was still shaking with rage and humiliation when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I'd let it go to voicemail. But at that point I was drained, with nothing left to lose. Hello? Is this Miss Evelyn Scott? A man's voice. Slow. Formal. Yes, this is she. Who's calling? My voice was still hoarse from the screaming. I'm Richard Keller, the private attorney of Mrs. Vivian Maddock, your grandmother. I'm very sorry to inform you that she passed away last week in Phoenix. We've been trying to reach you several times without success. I stood frozen in the kitchen. The room seemed to shrink around me. My grandmother passed away? I whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it hurt more. Vivian was the only light in my childhood, the only woman who ever dared to stand up to my mother, Susan. She was the one who helped me pay for my first year of college, when my mother told me to forget school and get a job. I couldn't even make out what Mr. Keller said next. Everything echoed like it was coming from far away. Will. Assets. Meeting at the office in Scottsdale. I hung up the phone, barely remembering how the call ended. I collapsed into a chair. She was gone. My mother had cleaned me out and disappeared. And me? I was just a fool with $0 in my bank account, and an empty safe. 2 days later, I showed up at the law office in downtown Scottsdale, Arizona. The room was quiet, elegant, but not flashy. On the desk sat a carefully arranged stack of documents. Richard Keller looked to be in his early 50s, tall, with a serious face that wasn't unkind. He stood up and shook my hand with both of his, something I rarely saw from people in his profession. Miss Evelyn, my deepest condolences. Vivian wasn't just a client. She was a friend. I swallowed hard and nodded. I still can't believe it. I understand, but there are some matters we need to go over. Mrs. Vivian's will was written 3 years ago, and last updated just 3 months before she passed. Mr. Keller pulled a cream-colored folder from the drawer and slid it across the desk toward me. I'll be direct. Mrs. Vivian left her entire estate to you. I blinked. All of it? All of it, including the Maddox Inn chain in Arizona and New Mexico, currently valued at around $10,500,000. There's also real estate in Sedona, a house in Flagstaff, and a personal investment portfolio worth over $1,700,000. I was nearly numb. What about my mother? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mr. Keller's face hardened slightly as he flipped to a page in the file and read slowly. Susan Scott, my daughter, has had more than enough chances and has made her own choices. I am leaving her no part of my estate. She's taken more than enough. I let out a laugh, not because anything was funny, but because I didn't know how else to react. She knew. She always knew who my mother really was. Mr. Keller nodded, then pulled an old leather-bound journal from the drawer, tied with a small red string. Vivian said you should read this alone. She called it her final gift. I took the journal in my hands, fingers trembling with emotion. The scent of old paper mixed with lavender, the perfume my grandmother always wore, tightened my throat. I turned to the first marked page. My Evelyn. If you're holding this journal, it means I'm gone. But I believe people never truly leave as long as they're remembered. You were always the best thing this family had, even if your mother never saw it. I covered my mouth to hold back a sob. What I've left you isn't just money. It's freedom. The power to escape the cycle your mother used to keep you in her grip. Use it wisely. And remember, sometimes, the best way to deal with a con artist is to let them think they're winning. I closed the journal, my heart pounding loudly in my chest. My mother didn't know about any of this. But she would, soon. I had just set down Vivian's journal when my phone buzzed again. Richard Keller's law office? I frowned and picked up. Scott. Sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know. Mr. Keller's voice dropped. Your mother contacted our office 3 days ago. She called from Thailand. She requested a copy of the will, and threatened to sue if she was excluded from the inheritance. I closed my eyes and let out a bitter laugh. Of course. Susan Scott was always like that. She treated everything as if it was rightfully hers, whether she earned it or not, and when it was taken away, she clawed like a wounded animal. Did you send her anything? I asked, my voice cold as ice. Absolutely not. Vivian made it clear all documents are to be shared with you only, but I believe she's found out something. It seems someone in our office may have leaked information. I hung up, my hands clenched so tightly they turned white. My blood boiled, not from rage, but adrenaline. I glanced at my grandmother's journal on the table. The page she marked was still open. Remember, Evelyn, the best way to deal with a snake is to let it crawl into the trap it thinks it controls. I sank deeper into the chair, eyes fixed on that line. The numbness from last week had faded. Now there was only a plan taking shape, step by step. 2 days later, I met with Tiffany, my best friend since high school. She worked in PR in Austin. Smart, sharp, and absolutely allergic to injustice. When I finished telling her everything, she just shrugged. So, you want to trap her? No, I want her to trap herself, I said evenly. She wants to think I'm soft, that I'll split the inheritance. Fine, we'll give her a reason to come back. Tiffany squinted, grinning slightly. Evelyn, I like this version of you way better than college. I called Devin, an old friend who used to be a cybersecurity analyst in San Diego. Now, a freelance expert for special cases. Devin had helped me recover a crashed hard drive back in college. Now I needed something more. I want full covert surveillance installed in Vivian's Sedona estate, I said over the phone. Cameras, audio, network monitoring, everything. You want someone to think they're in control. Exactly. Devin laughed. Sounds like a chess game. I'm in. 1 week later, everything was in place. The largest bedroom in the estate, one my grandmother never let my mother step into, had been cleaned and perfectly redecorated. Silk sheets. A safe rigged with a hidden camera. A laptop on the desk, loaded with fake financial files, all encrypted, monitored for behavior. Every mouse click, every sent email, would stream straight to my computer. I asked Keller to accidentally let a staff member overhear that I was considering splitting the inheritance if my mother came back to negotiate. The perfect bait. Less than 48 hours later, Keller called back. She booked a flight from Chiang Mai to New York, departures tomorrow night. I hung up, heart calmed. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of Susan. I was waiting for her. The next afternoon, Tiffany picked me up at the Flagstaff airport to prepare for our guest. In the car, she handed me her phone. She just emailed. From Susan Scott. Subject, about the inheritance. Message. Dearest Evelyn. I know there have been many misunderstandings. I think we should talk, as a family. Nothing is more important than family. I'm on my way home. Hope you understand. Mom. I handed the phone back to Tiffany with a soft laugh. It's starting. That evening, I met her at the gate of the estate. Susan stepped out of a rented SUV, still wearing a wine-colored silk dress, designer sunglasses, and that perfectly fake smile that made my skin crawl. Evelyn, sweetheart, she spread her arms for a hug. I tilted away, gently dodging. If you want to talk, then come inside. She blinked, then forced a smile. I led her to the special room. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw the safe, the laptop, the designer dress hanging in the closet. Is this my room? Temporarily, if you'd like to stay, I said. Voice light as air but devoid of emotion. As she stepped into the room, I stayed at the door, watching my phone screen. The live feed from the hidden camera had just started rolling. Within 5 minutes, she was trying to open the safe. No luck. Then she moved to the laptop. The screen lit up. She started reading through each fake document, each fabricated investment spreadsheet I had created to lure her in. Tiffany stood next to me, arms crossed. It's on. You ready for the final round? I nodded. This time, I'll let her sink herself with her own greed. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist. Not just because she was greedy, but because she believed she was smarter than everyone. Smarter than the lawyers, smarter than me, even smarter than Vivian herself. For someone like her, a room full of opportunity was no different from bait dangled in front of a shark. That night, I sat in the study, eyes fixed on the monitor. The entire feed from the surveillance cameras in the guest suite Vivian's old bedroom was streaming directly to Devin's system. Susan stood in front of the safe. She was wearing an ivory satin nightgown, holding a glass of red wine. Her gaze wasn't dreamy, it was calculating. She tried several passcodes, none worked. Instead of giving up, She sat down, pulled out her phone, and began taking photos of the safe from every angle. Tiffany peeked over my shoulder and whistled. Didn't take long. Patience was never her thing, huh? I didn't answer. I was watching her eyes, scanning the room like a seasoned thief. The closet, drawers, the framed pictures. 2 minutes later, Susan opened the laptop. Devin had preloaded it with treasures, forged financial reports, fabricated memos about secret investments, and lists of undisclosed real estate. All designed to be just tempting enough for someone like her. And just as expected, her eyes lit up. She didn't just read. She downloaded. She took photos. She set passwords. She started sending emails. The first one went to someone called Russell Properties. Another name, Harper Group. The last one made my blood run cold. Mitchell L. Scott. Your cousin, right? Tiffany asked, her face pale. Yeah, I said. They were both sued in 2016 for investor fraud in Fort Worth. Devin, monitoring everything from the control center, sent a message. She's forwarding everything to her backup email, setting up Zoom meetings for investment talks. I've locked all attachments. She's taken the bait. The next morning, Susan walked into the kitchen, looking like she had reclaimed her status as a wealthy lady of the manor. Did you sleep well, Evelyn? She asked, pouring coffee like we were some perfect little family. I looked up from my iPad, offered a faint smile. Slept fine, you? Wonderful. That room is a dream. Vivian always had such exquisite tastes. I said nothing. She sat across from me, her eyes glinting with poorly hidden excitement. I think it's time we talk about the inheritance. I know you're a generous person. Of course, we'll talk after breakfast. I stood and left her with her steaming coffee. In my mind, only one line from Vivian echoed. Let her think she's winning, until the trap snaps shut. That afternoon, Devin sent me the first audio recording from a Zoom call between Susan and a group of potential investors. Actually, Tiffany's associates in disguise. We'll need to see original ownership documents for the hotel, one of them said, playing the investor role. I can assure you, everything's legal. Evelyn's letting me handle the new investment deals. I'm her mother. I have influence. Her voice trembled slightly from excitement. That thrill. Not real power, but the illusion of control. I sent the recording to Keller. He called back in less than an hour. You have solid evidence. If you want, I can begin filing charges immediately. I looked out the window, the crimson sunset casting a warm glow over Vivian's garden. The scent of lavender still lingered in the air. Not yet, I said slowly. I want her to destroy her own reputation. Publicly. That's a rather ruthless tactic. I'm just using the lesson she taught me. That night, Susan went back into the room, this time with a handheld scanner. She scanned every single document, every page. Tiffany and I watched her every move on the screen. What do you think she'll do next? Tiffany asked. Set up a real investor call and get exposed in front of them all. I sipped my tea, eyes glued to the camera footage of my mother, the same woman who once left me penniless, now thrilled by a fake scheme designed solely to take her down. And strangely, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt calm. Because I would be the one to end it. The clink of glass echoed. Susan smiled, raising her wineglass in a toast to 3 men seated around the marble table, in the private dining room of Larkspur, an upscale restaurant in downtown Scottsdale. She wore a wine-red dress, full makeup, and the same pair of earrings I knew she had pawned for cash 2 years ago. Now she played the role of reborn businesswoman so well, she almost believed it herself. I sat 3 tables away at the bar, dressed in a plain business outfit, hair neatly tied up, eyes on the screen of my phone. Streaming live footage from the camera embedded in Tiffany's shirt button. She sat across from Susan, posing as a promising investment liaison, flanked by our 2 associates, one playing a venture fund director, the other a supposed international investor from Singapore. I know you gentlemen are looking for exclusive investment opportunities, Susan said, her voice smooth as melted butter. The Maddox Hotel Group is preparing to expand westward. I hold the first rights of transfer from the heir, my daughter, Evelyn. But she's not interested in the business. I nearly laughed out loud. Not interested? Who did she think she was? Mother Teresa of capital markets? One of the investors spoke up. May we see the original contracts and asset certifications? Susan smiled and pulled out a folder. Filled with the exact fake documents Devon and I had carefully created, all the numbers, stamps, and signatures were there. But the dates and asset codes were deliberately wrong. Tiffany tapped her phone under the table. Signal received. I stood up. She was at the peak of her delusion, and I was about to bring her down. I walked toward the table, heels clicking loudly on the hardwood floor. Everyone turned to look. Susan froze, her face going pale like she'd just seen a ghost. "Hello, Mother," I said clearly, stopping behind her. "Funny running into you. Scheming here." She blinked rapidly, trying to compose herself. "To Evelyn, I was merely introducing an investment opportunity you weren't interested in." I tilted my head, pulled out my phone and connected it to the large screen behind the bar. Devon had hacked it earlier that afternoon. "Oh, an opportunity? Then let's all take a look at the opportunity you've been working on." The screen lit up. Crystal clear footage showed Susan sneaking into Vivian's safe, covertly photographing documents, emailing files. Then came the recording of her phone call with Russell, a former partner once investigated for fraud, discussing how to liquidate assets quickly before Evelyn finds out. One of the investors shot up from his chair. "What the hell is this?" Susan's face went ghost white. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding. It's just a confidentiality issue. I didn't know I was being recorded." "That's right, you didn't know," I cut her off. "Because you thought you were smarter than everyone, but what you didn't know is that every single document you took was fake, designed to lure you into making a mistake." One of the fake investors looked so shocked he nearly spilled his water. "She doesn't have legal ownership?" I pulled out the original, notarized copy of the will and laid it on the table. "And the sole heir, my mother, Susan Scott, was excluded from the will. And this," I tapped the paper, "is evidence that she tried to defraud you, to claim assets that aren't hers." The room turned heavy with silence. Susan stepped back, her hands trembling. "You set me up." I stared straight into her eyes, cold and clear. "No, you walked into your own trap. You taught me how to survive. Now I'm returning the lesson, only a lot more kindly." Tiffany stood and gently guided our two investment partners toward the exit. One of them muttered, "If we get another call from her, we're reporting it to the police." Susan collapsed into her chair. I pulled out my phone and started recording again. "A copy of this will go to the authorities, you know that, but if you want to avoid criminal charges, you'll listen to my terms." She choked back a sob, voice hoarse. "Evelyn, I have nowhere to go." "You're wrong," I said, pulling out a plane ticket and a key to an apartment in Montana. "I already made arrangements." She stared at me, truly stared. For the first time, without deception, without makeup, just a broken woman laid bare in front of everyone. Her face swelled like she was about to cry. "What are you going to do with me?" "Nothing, just let you live like a normal person. Like the ones you once hurt." I turned and walked away. Behind me I heard the sound of a wine glass hitting the floor, shattering into pieces. My office is on the 12th floor, overlooking downtown Scottsdale to the west, where the sunset usually bleeds red across the glass. That afternoon, Susan sat across from me in that very room, silent. No silk dress, no heavy makeup. She wore a long ash-gray coat. Her hair was messy, lips dry, eyes hollow like she'd just stepped out of a storm. I opened a drawer and placed 2 envelopes on the desk. One is a plane ticket to Billings, Montana. Inside, there's also a key to a prepaid apartment for 6 months, a part-time job at a small coffee shop, and a $15,000 balance to help you live decently. Susan frowned, suspicion flickering in her eyes. And the other one? I slid the second envelope toward her. It was thicker, evidence, videos, emails, audio recordings, copies of the fake documents you used to scam investors. Mitchell's statement: if I send this to the police, there won't be a plane ride, just an interrogation room. Susan let out a sharp laugh, like a blade being unsheathed. You really think I'll believe this? That you're just giving me a chance to make things right? After everything? I leaned back, locking eyes with her. I don't need you to believe it, I need you to choose. She stared at me for a long moment, then lowered her head, fingers clasped so tightly they turned white. I'll return the money in the safe. I never meant to run forever, I thought you'd never understand. You always looked at me like I was some kind of failure. You stole my money, you disappeared, you pretended to feel remorse, then came back to steal again. How did you expect me to look at you, like a victim? I opened a second file and pulled out a printout of the email Susan had sent to Russell. Evelyn is weak. She won't do anything. It's all in my hands now. I tossed the printout onto the table. Susan didn't laugh anymore. Her face twisted like it was being pulled by wires. You're getting revenge. No, I said. I'm ending it. Ending the cycle of lies, debt, and manipulation. I used to hope you'd change, but I don't anymore. I just want you gone from my life. She took a deep breath. A long silence followed, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. Where the hell is Montana anyway? Far enough, I replied. Far enough that you won't ruin anyone else. There's snow, a little coffee shop. Someone who'll hire you to wipe tables and serve waffles. A place where no one knows who Susan Scott is. Susan looked at the two envelopes on the table, as if each held a blade. Her hand trembled as she reached for the plane ticket, pulling it out. And if I don't go? I unlocked my phone and slid my finger across the screen. Ready to email the Maricopa County Sheriff. You already know the answer. A single tear rolled down her cheek. For the first time, I didn't see it as a weapon. It looked real, lonely. I could have had everything. But instead you chose deceit, over and over again, I cut in. And I chose to let go. Susan stood and took the ticket. Her face was bare, her eyes stripped of illusion. Are you really sending me away? No, you walked out of my life a long time ago, I'm just opening the door for you to finish the exit. She turned and walked to the door. Before opening it, she glanced back. Her eyes were no longer sharp, just a dull, gray sadness. You really are Vivian's granddaughter. I nodded. She taught me that sometimes, offering a final chance isn't about whether they deserve it. It's about whether you need to close the chapter. Susan nodded, her lips moving as if to say something, but no words came. Then she stepped out of the office, closing the door behind her, like sealing off a rotting era I had been trapped in for far too long. I exhaled. For the first time in months. Deeply. Tiffany walked in a few minutes later, placing 2 glasses of wine on the table. She gone? Yeah. You okay? I picked up my glass, swirled it gently. Not sure, but at least now, I can start writing the next part of my story, without having to erase someone else's mistakes first. 3 months after Susan left, I stood in my office, staring at the freshly stamped file. The Maddox Fund, Restitution for Financial Fraud Victims. It wasn't a flashy name. Not a shiny PR campaign. But it mattered to me, and to the dozens of people who had been scammed by my mother, Susan Scott, over nearly 2 decades. Keller and I had worked day and night combing through old files, small lawsuits that had been buried, victims who couldn't afford to keep fighting, investments that had never returned a cent. I couldn't undo what she'd done. But I could offer some justice to those who had trusted the wrong person. The fund began sending out modest checks, $2,000, $5,000, then $10,000, each one with a handwritten letter of apology from me. Not on her behalf. but on behalf of the children who had to carry the names of liars. Tiffany once told me, back when I was doubting if this effort would make any difference. You can't clean up everything she did, but you can stop it from spreading. I didn't respond. But I never forgot those words. I still kept quiet tabs on my mother. Not out of hate. Not hoping for redemption. Just to know. To know that Susan Scott had truly stopped. Through a friend of Keller's in Billings, I learned she had kept her word. No scandals. No shady loans. No high-risk ventures. She lived in the prepaid apartment, a modest older building but warm enough. Worked part-time as a server at a small cafe called Morning Rise. No one there knew she once wore Versace gowns to con Texas businessmen, or forged fake property deeds to pressure people into investing in hotels that never existed. She was just Sue, the gray-haired woman who brewed her coffee too strong and always wiped tables more thoroughly than necessary. One January morning, with a thin blanket of snow covering the rooftops of the small Montana town, I drove to Morning Rise. I didn't call ahead. I wasn't even sure why I came. I just knew. It was time. The doorbell chimed as I walked in. The space was warm, the air scented with waffles and cinnamon. She was behind the counter wearing a dark blue apron, hair tied back. She turned, reaching for a cloth to wipe the table, then froze. Our eyes met. I saw her stiffen slightly, her hand trembling. "Evelyn?" I gave a small nod. No hug, no tears, no forgiveness. Just a look, real and unfiltered. I sat at the counter. Black coffee, no sugar. She quietly poured the coffee, said nothing. I reached into my coat pocket and placed a small box on the counter. Mahogany wood, lined with deep blue velvet. She opened it. Inside was an old silver mirror with ornate carvings, the keepsake from Vivian that I'd held onto. She reached out to touch the edge, then pulled her hand back. As if the memory had burned. "I thought you kept this," she whispered. "Now it's your turn to have it," I said. "Not to look at your reflection, but to see yourself." She looked up, her lips parted as if to speak, but I held up my hand. I didn't come for explanations, and not to forgive, either. But I figured, if I could start over from the wreckage you left behind, then maybe you deserve a chance too. Her face changed. No defenses. No performance. Just a tired woman, worn down by years of heavy masks. "Thank you for not calling the police." I looked at her, calm and steady. "I didn't. Because I didn't want to become your reflection." She gripped the mirror tightly, eyes glistening. But no tears fell. "Will you ever come back?" I stood, grabbed my coat. Outside the window, snow drifted softly. "Maybe," I said, with no promise. "Where you can really see yourself in that mirror. Not the shadow, but the person who can still change." I walked out. The doorbell chimed once more as the door closed behind me. I didn't look back. But I knew. She was watching. Holding the silver mirror in her hands. Maybe she'd never change completely. Maybe she'd fail again. But that day, in the faded winter light, I saw her. Not as a con artist, not as a ghost of the past, but as a person trying to find whatever good was left. And as Vivian once said, redemption doesn't start with an apology. It starts with action, repeated every single day. I left Montana without a goodbye. But for the first time in my life, I didn't need a perfect ending. Just an honest beginning. Evelyn's story reminds us that sometimes the people who hurt us most deeply are the ones closest to us by blood. But through betrayal and pain, she chose justice over revenge, healing over repeating the cycle. In real life, not everyone will change, but we always have the power to choose our response. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing ourselves. And sometimes the strongest thing we can do is let go at the right time. What do you think about Evelyn's journey and her final choice? Do you believe Susan can truly change? Share your thoughts below, And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, real-life stories and lessons about family. I was a mistake. The result of my mother's reckless night with a stranger. If it weren't for the pressure from my grandparents, I might have never been born. But they forced my parents to get married, and 9 months later I arrived. Not as a joy, but as a life sentence. My father never hid his resentment toward me. "There goes my youth," he would mumble every time he looked at me, as if I had ripped him away from some grand life he deserved. My mother, though she never hit or yelled at me, never gave me a hug or a kind word either. To them, I wasn't their child. I was just a burden they were forced to carry. The first 10 years of my life revolved around a single rule: don't be a bother. I learned to walk softly, speak quietly, and disappear into the shadows of that small house. But no matter how careful I was, my very existence was a thorn in my father's side. Then, one day, the miracle of the family arrived. Ella, the golden child, the angel in my parents' eyes. Unlike me, Ella was welcomed with happy tears, warm embraces, and endless congratulations. From that moment on, I officially became the outsider, the servant in my own home. "Zoe, watch your sister." "Zoe, be quiet, Ella is sleeping." "Zoe, why can't you be more like Ella?" Ella got brand new clothes, I got hand-me-downs from distant relatives. Ella had birthday cakes, I had a candle stuck into a loaf of bread. Ella received hugs, I was met with silence. Once, I asked my mother, "Did I do something wrong?" She just sighed and said nothing, as if she didn't even want to acknowledge me. I learned to accept it, to stop expecting anything. But there was one thing I couldn't stop doing: dreaming. I learned to make myself invisible. If I stayed silent long enough, if I didn't make a fuss, if I disappeared, maybe my father wouldn't look at me with disgust, maybe my mother wouldn't sigh every time I spoke. But no matter how hard I tried, I was still just a shadow. A shadow whose only purpose was to serve this family. When I was 8, my mother handed me a mop and said, "From now on, you'll be cleaning the whole house." At first, it was just wiping tables and sweeping floors, but soon I was scrubbing, washing clothes, doing dishes, and handling any chore that needed small hands. By the time I was 10, my mother barely lifted a finger. "Zoe, the laundry isn't done." "Zoe, the kitchen floor is filthy, clean it again." "Zoe, make dinner." And just like that, I became the family's unpaid maid. Meanwhile, Ella lived a completely different life. My mother bought her pretty dresses, ordered cakes for her birthdays, and gave her new toys and dolls whenever she pointed at them in a store. I remember once, I dared to ask my mother for a new backpack because mine was falling apart. She looked at me like I had said something ridiculous. "Your backpack still works fine." A week later, Ella got a brand new pink backpack covered in glitter. But the worst part wasn't the gifts I never received. It was the way my mother looked at Ella with warmth. The way my father proudly patted her back whenever she brought home good grades. And me? I could clean the entire house, and no one would say thank you. I could cook dinner every night, and no one would even ask if I had eaten. Yet, no matter how abandoned I felt, I found one thing that made me feel valuable. Cooking. The first time I made something on my own was when I was 9. It was just scrambled eggs, but I still remember the joy of watching the golden yolk melt onto the toast. Over time, I learned by watching my mother in the kitchen, memorizing every movement, experimenting whenever I had the chance. By the time I was 12, I could cook a full meal. I still remember the first time I made lasagna for the family dinner. When Ella took her first bite, she gasped, "Wow, this is so good!" My mother smiled, but not at me. She turned to my father and said, "I think I made it better this time. Don't you agree?" I wanted to scream, "I made it!" But then I remembered. I was just a shadow, and shadows don't get recognition. I clenched my fists. It's okay. One day, I would find a place where I belonged. A place where I no longer had to stand in the dark, waiting for someone to finally see me. I always knew my place in this family. I was the responsible one, the invisible child, the outsider to their lives. But that didn't mean I didn't have dreams. I wanted to be a chef. Not just someone who cooked meals in the corner of a family kitchen, but someone who created dishes people would remember. I spent hours after school watching cooking shows, writing down recipes, experimenting whenever I had the chance. I imagined one day I would open my own restaurant. A place where people came because they loved the food I made. A place where I was no longer just a shadow. But when I dared to say that out loud, all I received was mockery. Open a restaurant? Who do you think you are, Gordon Ramsay? My father scoffed, shaking his head. Restaurants go bankrupt faster than you think. People might try your food once and forget about it the next day. Zoe, be realistic, my mother added, her voice as if I had just said I wanted to go to Mars. Why don't you get a normal job, accounting, secretarial work, teaching, something stable? And then, as always, Ella drove the knife in deeper. You could work at McDonald's. They need people who can cook too. They laughed. I clenched my teeth, swallowing the humiliation. I didn't know why, but despite their mockery, my father still agreed to pay for my culinary school. But he made it clear, this is all you're getting from me. Don't expect anything else. The house, the savings, everything goes to Ella. I should have felt hurt, but instead, I felt relieved. I didn't need anything from them. I just needed a chance. And I was about to get one. Culinary school was the first place in my life where I felt like I truly belonged. No one ignored me or compared me to Ella. There, talent was measured by the food you created, not by your last name. I stayed up late practicing, mastering knife skills, understanding flavors and how they blended. For the first time, I felt like I had value. I dreamed that after graduation, I would find a stable job and slowly build my own restaurant. But that dream crumbled quickly. No savings, nowhere to live. I had no choice but to go back home. And the moment I stepped inside, I knew nothing had changed. Zoe, you're a chef now, right? My mother's voice had a suspiciously cheerful tone. That means you'll be cooking every day from now on. You don't have anything more important to do you? Ella snickered. Yeah, at least now you can do something useful for the family. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue about. I just quietly hung my culinary diploma on the wall of my old bedroom. A cramped space with faded wallpaper and the same worn-out bed I had slept in since childhood. I had come so far, only to be dragged back to where I started. But I swore to myself, I wouldn't stay here forever. One day I would walk out of this house, and this time, I would never come back. I thought that after graduating from culinary school, my life would change. But no, I was still Zoe, the invisible one in my own family, now also their unpaid personal chef. Every day I worked long hours at a local restaurant. The pay was low, but at least I was gaining experience. My shifts stretched from early morning until late at night, but when I got home, my mother always had a list of chores waiting for me. You have a job now, but don't forget to clean the house. I would have laughed if it weren't so cruel. I had been doing chores since I was a child, while Ella never lifted a finger. Ella, the golden child, was still pampered like a princess. My parents spent money on her whenever she wanted something. When she entered her senior year of high school, my father pulled up to the house in a brand new white car, waving for Ella to come outside. My little girl deserves the best, he said, handing her the keys. I stood there, staring at the car gleaming under the sunlight, bitterness rising in my throat. When I was her age, I didn't even dream of having a car. I walked or borrowed an old bicycle to get to work. And even when I mentioned saving up for a used car, my parents only scoffed. With what money? You can barely afford rent, let alone a car. I had thought about moving out, but with my meager wages, affording an apartment alone was impossible. I tried saving, but my mother always found a way to take money from me. You live under this roof, so you have to contribute to the household expenses. It didn't matter that I cooked every meal and cleaned the house every day. I still had to hand over my earnings like some unwelcome tenant. That Christmas I decided, no matter what, I would do something to feel like I belonged in this family. I saved for months, trying to buy gifts for everyone. But when I saw the expensive presents Ella received from my parents, a brand new iPhone, a sparkling jewelry set, I knew I couldn't compete. So, I bought lottery tickets. Not the cheap scratch-offs, but tickets for the biggest jackpot of the year. I thought, maybe, just maybe, luck would smile on this family. On Christmas morning, I placed the envelopes on the table, each containing a ticket. When they opened them, their first reaction wasn't surprise or joy, it was mockery. Lottery tickets? My father raised an eyebrow. Are you serious? Zoe, couldn't you think of something more practical? My mother shook her head. What a waste. Ella scoffed, tossing her envelope aside. Wow, you're so broke you couldn't even buy a real present? They laughed. I sat there, frozen. My mother looked at me, her voice sickly sweet. Now that I think about it, since Zoe didn't get us anything meaningful, she shouldn't expect any gifts either. That sounds fair, right? They all nodded in agreement, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. I gripped the edge of the table, my nails digging into my palm. Then, without a word, I stood up and snatched the lottery tickets back from their hands. You know what? My voice trembled with anger. I'll keep these. Merry Christmas. Without waiting for their reaction, I stormed out of the house, feeling like I couldn't breathe. Christmas was supposed to be a time for family, yet I had never felt more alone. A few days after Christmas, I had almost forgotten about the lottery tickets I had snatched back from my family. I stuffed them into my coat pocket and tossed them onto a chair in my room. I had no reason to believe I would be lucky. But then, one morning during my break at the restaurant, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was another spam call. But the voice on the other end left me frozen. Hello, is this Zoe Parker? This is Linda from the State Lottery Commission. I'm calling to inform you that you're holding a winning jackpot ticket. I stiffened. What did you just say? Your lottery ticket matched all the numbers from the Christmas draw. After taxes, your winnings amount to $1,750,000. The world spun around me. I blinked, gripping my phone tightly, trying to breathe evenly. $1,750,000. A number I had never even dared to dream of. For a moment, I couldn't believe it was real. But as Linda explained the process of claiming my winnings, I realized this was my chance. I had to tell someone, but who? I had no close friends, no one to share this moment with, and so, I made the stupidest mistake of my life. I went home and told my family. I walked into the kitchen, where they were having dinner. I won the lottery, I announced, my voice still shaking from the excitement. $1,750,000. Silence blanketed the room. My mother and father froze mid-bite. Ella put down her phone, eyes widening. Then suddenly, Ella shot up from her chair. Wait, that was the ticket you were going to give Mom. That means the money belongs to the family. A chill ran down my spine. No, you all didn't want them, remember? I took them back. My father nodded slowly, placing his fork down. Zoe, you're living under this roof. You should share with your family. This money could help us a lot. My mother chimed in, her voice unnaturally sweet. Sweetheart, do you even know how to manage that kind of money? Your father and I could hold on to it for you. I laughed bitterly. Don't pretend to care. We both know that if I give you that money, I'll never see a dime of it again. Ella clenched her fists. You're so selfish. You owe this family. You've been living off of us for years. Do you even think about who paid for food, rent, and all the bills? I let out a dry chuckle. I owe you? I did all the housework. I cooked. I handed over my paychecks to Mom, and now, just because I won the lottery, you suddenly expect me to repay a debt? My father's expression darkened. If you won't share, then you don't need to stay here. I stared at him. What do you mean? My mother stood up abruptly, crossing her arms, her eyes cold. If you're not going to give this family the money, then get out. Don't think you can live here without contributing, you have money now. Take care of yourself. We've let you stay here long enough. A wave of anger surged through me, but at the same time, another thought crept in. Relief. I looked into the eyes of each person in the room and realized they had never truly considered me part of this family. I took a deep breath. Fine. I'll leave. No one tried to stop me. No one showed any regret. I walked upstairs, stuffed my clothes into a bag, grabbed my documents and the winning ticket. As I stepped out the door, I paused for a moment. Thank you, I said, my voice steadier than ever. Thanks to you, I finally realize I don't belong here. Then I walked out, never looking back. I had no home, no family, but I had the most important thing. A chance to start over. I stepped out into the cold winter night, clutching my small bag with everything I owned. I had no clear plan, but one thing was certain, I would never come back. My first stop was the lottery office. I needed to ensure that the money was legally mine, that no one could take it from me. When I signed the check with $1,750,000 written on it, I knew this wasn't just money. This was my way out. But I wasn't going to waste it. I wasn't the kind of person to buy luxury cars or designer clothes just to prove something. I needed a plan. I rented a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, not too expensive, but enough to finally have my own space for the first time in my life. For weeks, I spent hours in front of my laptop, researching everything about opening a restaurant: real estate costs, business permits, food suppliers, staffing, marketing strategies. I knew that if I wanted to succeed, I couldn't rely on luck. I had to be strategic. After days of searching, I found an old building in the heart of downtown. It had once been a restaurant but had been abandoned for years. The air smelled of mold, and the floors were cracked, but I could see the potential. When I met the landlord, he chuckled. "You want to turn this place into a restaurant? Well, good luck with that." But I didn't need luck. I needed hard work. I hired contractors, renovated the space, chose every tile, every light fixture myself. I didn't just want a restaurant. I wanted it to be a home for people who loved food, a place where customers came not just for the meals, but for the experience. 3 months later, I stood in front of the gleaming glass doors of Zoe's Table. My first restaurant, my name on the sign. Opening day was the most terrifying moment of my life. I didn't know if anyone would come, if they would like my food. But when the first customer walked in, placed their order, and then smiled after the first bite, I knew I had done it. Day by day more customers arrived. People started talking about the small restaurant where the chef personally crafted every dish with passion. I created signature recipes, hosted food events, used social media to spread the word. From one small restaurant, Zoe's Table became a sensation. A year later, I opened my second location. 3 years later, I had my third. I, Zoe Parker, the girl once cast aside by her own family, was now the owner of a thriving restaurant chain. And I was just getting started. 3 years later, I was sitting in my office at Zoe's Table's third location, focused on reviewing financial reports, when my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Zoe?" A familiar voice rang through the line, sending a chill down my spine. "Ma." I hadn't heard her voice in 3 years. No messages, no calls, and now, out of nowhere, she was reaching out. Something must have happened. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice void of emotion. She sighed, as if burdened by some great trouble. "It's Ella. She's in trouble, Zoe. She lost her job, was caught stealing, and now no one will hire her. She's drowning in debt. The family is struggling. We need your help." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath to suppress the wave of anger rising inside me. "And you thought of me. I thought you kicked me out. I left, and we have nothing to do with each other anymore." "Zoe, she's still your sister." My mother's voice softened, as if she was trying to tap into whatever compassion I had left. "She made mistakes, but she needs a chance to make things right. Can't you help?" I was silent. A part of me wanted to hang up immediately, but another part, the weaker, foolish part, still remembered the little girl Ella used to be, before she became entitled, selfish, and manipulative. I sighed. I can hire her, but she won't get special treatment. If she wants to work, she follows the rules like everyone else. Thank you, Zoe. I knew you were a good person. I let out a dry laugh. So now they needed me, the same girl they had thrown away. Ella started working at my restaurant as an HR manager. At first, she acted extremely diligent, arriving early, eagerly assisting employees, even working overtime when necessary. I started to think that maybe, just maybe, she truly wanted to change. But then, the whispers began. A few employees approached me, looking uneasy. Zoe, we've been hearing things. Ella had been quietly stirring up division among the staff. She told them I was underpaying them compared to the restaurant's revenue, that I was hoarding all the profits for myself, and that the business should have rightfully been hers, because I had stolen everything from the family. At first, I didn't want to believe it. But then, I started noticing the shift. Employees grew distant, some avoiding eye contact, others no longer as motivated as before. Then, one day, my head chef Marco pulled me aside. Zoe, you need to know this, he said in a low voice, his expression serious. Ella has been stirring up trouble. She's telling staff that if we go on strike, you'll have no choice but to raise wages or shut the place down. A slow, burning fury ignited within me. I had given her a chance. I had let her back into my life. And she had stabbed me in the back. But I wasn't the old Zoe anymore. She was about to find out exactly who I had become. I clenched my fists. Don't worry, Marco, I know what to do. I thought Ella was just causing trouble, trying to damage my reputation. But then, late one evening, Jenna, my financial manager, walked into my office, her face pale. Zoe, we have a problem. I looked up from the ledger. What is it? We're missing $7,500 this month. The cash disappeared from the safe with no record of withdrawal. I felt a jolt of disbelief. Does anyone else know? I asked. Jenna shook her head. I only just discovered it after double-checking everything. But Zoe, only a few people have access to that safe. You, me, Marco, and... She trailed off, but I already knew what she was about to say. Ella. I couldn't jump to conclusions based on suspicion alone. But I also couldn't let this continue. If someone was stealing from me, stealing from my employees, they would be held accountable. So I quietly installed hidden security cameras around the safe and the accounting office. 4 days later, late at night while reviewing the reports, I got an alert from the surveillance system. Unusual activity detected in the accounting office. I clicked on the live feed and there she was. Elle. She slipped into the room, glancing around to make sure no one was watching, then opened the safe. Her hands moved quickly, stuffing wads of cash into her purse. I held my breath, watching the scene unfold. There was no mistake. I had given Ella a second chance. And she had betrayed me again. The next morning, I called the police. When they arrived at the restaurant and asked for Ella, she panicked, trying to act innocent. What? What are you doing? I didn't do anything. I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. I have evidence. The cameras recorded everything. Ella's face turned pale. You wouldn't do this to me, would you? I looked her straight in the eyes. I will. The police handcuffed Ella in the middle of the restaurant, in front of employees and customers. Less than an hour later, my parents barged into the restaurant, their faces filled with rage. Zoe, what the hell do you think you're doing? My father roared. You called the police on your own sister? My mother stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. She just made a mistake. Did you really have to be so cruel to your own sister? I let out a dry laugh. A mistake? The mistake was trusting you all again. My father stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. You'll regret this. If you don't drop the charges right now, you're no longer our daughter. For the first time in my life, I felt free hearing those words. I folded my arms and shrugged. Fine, just pretend I never existed. Like you did the day I walked out. They continued yelling, pleading, even threatening to sue me. But their words meant nothing. I stared at them with indifference. Eventually they stormed out, carrying with them the same hatred they had always had for me. But I didn't feel pain. I felt satisfaction. This time, the door I had once left open for them was shut forever. On the day of the trial, I arrived early. Not because I was eager for the hearing, but because I wanted to see if Ella still had the audacity to look me in the eye and lie. She walked into the courtroom looking flawless, her hair perfectly styled, her outfit professional, her eyes shimmering as if she were the true victim. When she took the witness stand, she sighed and shook her head regretfully. "I never intended to steal the money," Ella began, her voice trembling with faux remorse. I just borrowed it from my sister. I had every intention of paying it back, but before I could, she called the police. I never thought she would do this to her own family." I clenched my fists but remained silent. I had been preparing for this moment. Then, the prosecutor stood up. "Miss Parker, are you aware that this isn't the first time you've been accused of theft?" Ella's face paled. I don't know what you're talking about." The courtroom doors opened and a middle-aged man walked in. I recognized him instantly. Ella's former boss. He stood before the jury and detailed everything Ella had done at his company, how she had stolen money and, when caught, falsely accused him of sexual harassment to escape consequences. The courtroom buzzed with shock. Ella's eyes widened. For the first time in her life, she had no lie to cover herself. The prosecutor then played an audio recording of former employees confirming that Ella had fabricated the allegations to save herself. And when the judge delivered the verdict, Ella was officially found guilty of theft and fraud. I watched as the officers handcuffed her again. She sobbed, begging, pleading, but no one responded. Then she turned to me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. "You'll regret this, Zoe," she hissed. "You stole my life." I met her gaze one last time. "No, Ella, you destroyed your own life." After that day, I never contacted them again. They called me a few times, to blame me, to beg, but I never answered. They no longer had any ties to me. I went back to my life, focused on expanding my restaurant business. 3 years later, Zoe's Table had 5 locations across the state, becoming a well-known culinary brand. But more importantly, I was no longer alone. Marco, Jenna, and my loyal employees were not just colleagues, they were my family. A family built not on blood, but on respect, loyalty, and real love. I had once been Zoe, the forgotten girl, the overlooked one, the outcast. But now, I was Zoe Parker, the woman who built her own future and would never let anyone take it from her again. Zoe's story is not just a personal journey, it's a reflection of a harsh reality. Many people are undervalued and taken advantage of by their own families, yet they still rise above it. This story is a reminder that family isn't always a place of love and safety, and sometimes, cutting ties with toxic relationships is the only way to find true self-worth. Success isn't about luck, it's about perseverance, determination, and believing in yourself. Zoe proves that your past doesn't define your future, you do. What do you think of Zoe's story? Have you ever faced a similar situation or known someone who had to fight for their own worth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow this channel for more powerful real-life stories about family and life. I've always wondered, if that day hadn't happened, would my life have been different? If my father hadn't collapsed in that warm, familiar kitchen, would I have grown up with a complete family, with a childhood untouched by pain and abandonment? But life doesn't deal in what-ifs. That morning, the kitchen was filled with the rich aroma of melting butter, the slight crisp of pancake batter searing on an old cast-iron skillet. My father was making panda-shaped pancakes, my absolute favorite. He wore his blue apron, whisking the batter with one hand while whistling a cheerful tune. "Hey, princess, come help your old man out," he called, grinning, waving the spatula like it was a magic wand. I giggled, hopped off the sofa, leaving my rag doll on the floor, and ran toward him. I never reached him. The spatula hit the tiled floor with a sharp, jarring sound that sliced through the peaceful morning. My father froze, his eyes widening as if an invisible hand had tightened around him. Then, he collapsed, one hand clutching his chest. I remember my mother's scream, the chair crashing to the ground, my own frantic cries, but all of it blurred into a distorted, fragmented memory. In the blink of an eye, my father was gone. The man who used to carry me on his shoulders, chase me around the backyard on summer afternoons, and teach me how to tie my shoelaces, was now just a name engraved on a cold stone. My mother, Olivia, was utterly broken in the days following the funeral. She cried until she had no more tears left, clutching my father's old shirt through endless sleepless nights. I remember thinking, she would never get over this. But as it turned out, she let go faster than I ever expected. Less than a year later, she began to change. The empty chair at the dinner table no longer felt like a void. Music played in the house again. I began to hear her laugh. Not the forced, hollow kind, but a real, soft, contented laugh. I thought she was learning to heal. But I was wrong. She had found someone else. One autumn afternoon, I came home and saw my mother sitting in the living room with a stranger. He had salt and pepper hair, deep brown eyes, and a kind smile. "Sophia, come here, sweetheart, this is Peter." I stood frozen, as if I had been pushed out of the world I once knew. Peter was a widower, my mother explained. They had met in a grief support group. He used to be a teacher, now he worked as a financial consultant. He was kind, gentle, and patient. At least with my mother. But I couldn't ignore the fact that he was not my father. A few months later, they got married. I still remember my mother's wedding day. I wore a pale pink dress, standing at the edge of the hall while she and Peter held hands, exchanging vows. No one asked me how I felt. No one noticed me biting my lip to keep from crying. From that day on, Peter became part of our lives. But he was never truly my father, and that's when everything started to change. Not for the better. When my mother told me I was going to have a sibling, I thought it would be a good thing. I imagined holding my baby sibling's tiny hand, teaching them how to swing on the playground, sharing whispered secrets under the glow of a nightlight. I had seen my friends with younger siblings. Sure, they complained about babysitting, but there was always something special in their eyes when they talked about them. But from the moment Peter announced, "Sophia, you're going to be a big sister," something felt off. My mother was no longer my mother. She stopped asking me how school was. She stopped checking my homework before bed. Every thought, every conversation, revolved around the baby that hadn't even arrived yet. "You need to be more careful, Sophia, don't run in the house." "I don't want to be stressed." "Sophia, you can make your own breakfast, can't you? Mommy is really tired." "Don't be so loud, your baby sibling can hear you." And then, on a bitter winter morning, Sarah was born. My mother cried. Peter cried. The nurses in the hospital praised my mother for doing such a great job. I stood in the corner of the room, watching the tiny, red-faced baby in my mother's arms, waiting for the moment she would look at me, take my hand, and tell me that we were still a family. That moment never came. From that day on, my mother disappeared. Not literally, she still lived in the same house, still cooked, still cleaned, still existed in my daily life. But she was no longer my mother. Every ounce of her love and attention now belonged to Sarah, the perfect daughter she had always wanted. Each morning, I no longer heard my mother calling me down for breakfast. Instead, I heard soft lullabies, tender whispers, the quiet footsteps pacing back and forth in Sarah's room. Every family plan, dinners, vacations, birthdays, revolved around Sarah's sleep schedule, her mood, her needs. Some days, I went to school on an empty stomach because my mother forgot to make breakfast. Some nights, I sat with my homework, waiting for her to help me with a difficult math problem, only to hear her distracted voice say, "Sophia, you're a big girl now, you can do it on your own, can't you?" Yes, I could do it on my own. And so I did. Peter, though kind, couldn't do much beyond offering me worried glances. He tried. I knew he did. He took me to karate classes, sat for hours watching me train, cheered me on when I earned my first belt. He bought me a new sketchbook whenever he saw me lost in my drawings, but he could never replace what I had lost. Once, when Sarah turned 2, I asked my mother, "Mom, can I have a day just for the two of us, just you and me?" She paused for a moment. For a fleeting second I thought she might say yes. But then she turned to look at Sarah playing in her crib, smiled gently, and said, "We can't leave your sister behind, Sophia. Sarah needs me." And I don't? That question never left my lips. I simply lowered my head, clenched my fists and nodded. Just like I always did. As Sarah grew, the distance between me and my mother widened. I became the silent helper in my own home. I mopped the floors while my mother soothed Sarah. I folded laundry when she didn't have time. I held Sarah when she was too tired. Then, when I was only 13, my mother announced that she was quitting her job. "Sarah needs me at home, Sophia, you understand, don't you?" No, I didn't. I didn't understand why a 2-year-old needed her mother all day, while a 13-year-old didn't. But I said nothing, I just nodded. Every child has a moment when they realize that life isn't fair. But I didn't just realize it, I lived it. Every morning, I woke up in my small simple room, brushed my own teeth, picked out my own clothes, grabbed my own bag, and left for school without anyone reminding me. But Sarah? Sarah never had to do anything by herself. My mother was always there, picking out every dress, tying every ribbon, placing every bite of food on her plate, with the delicate care of a queen tending to her princess. I don't remember the last time my mother asked me if I was hungry. But I remember the hollow ache in my stomach every morning at school, the way my teacher's eyes softened when she noticed I had no lunch. At first, I hoped, maybe today, my mother just forgot. But after dozens of times I realized she had never thought about it to begin with. I also don't know when cleaning Sarah's room became my responsibility. At first, my mother only asked for small favors. "Sophia, can you pick up your sister's toys for a second? My hands are full." I did it, thinking it was temporary. But it became an unspoken rule. Sarah grew up in a spotless room that she never cleaned herself, and every day I picked up after her, the clothes she left on the floor, the toys she scattered everywhere. "Sophia, help your sister for a bit, okay?" A bit. One day while I was folding Sarah's clothes, Peter passed by. He stopped at the door, watching me for a moment, before speaking in a quiet voice. "Sophia, why are you doing this?" I froze, a small pink sweater still in my hands. I didn't know how to answer. Peter stepped into the room, picked up a doll from the floor and let out a long sigh. "You're not a maid, Sophia." But what else was I? Peter was the only one in the house who truly saw me. On the mornings my mother forgot to make me breakfast, Peter quietly left a sandwich on the kitchen counter. When my mother didn't remember I had an important test, Peter was the one who wished me luck before I left. And when I sat alone in the corner of the living room on cold evenings, he was the one who took me to the movies and bought me hot chocolate. But Peter couldn't change anything. Every time he tried to speak up about my mother's blatant favoritism, it always ended in long, exhausting arguments. "Sarah is still little, Peter. Every baby needs their mother more." "Sarah is 6 years old, Olivia. What about Sophia? She needs you too." But my mother never listened, she never did. Sarah was always the priority, and I was just a shadow on the sidelines. Peter tried many ways to make it up to me, but I knew he was powerless too. One of the biggest things he ever did for me was signing me up for karate classes 3 times a week. "Sophia, you need something that's just for you," he said as he dropped me off at my first lesson. I wasn't sure. I had never thought of myself as strong or fast, but as I stepped into the class, as I felt my body move through the motions, I understood what Peter meant. There, I wasn't the forgotten child. I wasn't the unpaid babysitter. I was just me. Sophia. someone who could defend herself. Peter never missed a single practice. Every time I improved, he would smile proudly and say, "I'm so proud of you, Sophia." For a while I thought that if I got better, if I worked harder, maybe my mother would finally see me. But no, that never happened. She was too busy with Sarah, too consumed with the perfect dreams she had built around her. And I started to realize that I didn't belong here anymore. I stood on the graduation stage, gripping my diploma tightly, scanning the rows of seats in the audience. Peter sat in the front row, clapping proudly. And my mother? She was there too, but she wasn't looking at me. I knew what she was thinking. She wasn't happy that I had earned a scholarship. She wasn't proud that I was standing on this stage. She was thinking about Sarah. Just like always. Sarah was at home, not even bothering to attend the ceremony. 16 years old, and my sister still lived like a child who had never grown up. Her room was always lit by the glow of a computer screen, where she spent hours playing games and chatting with her useless friends. After the ceremony, Peter pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Sophia." I swallowed hard, trying not to cry. And my mother? She said nothing except one short sentence. "We need to talk about your college plans." I knew what was coming. I had been expecting this for a long time. She didn't waste time getting to the point. "Have you really thought about college?" She sat across from me at the dining table, absent-mindedly turning her teacup in her hands. "Or maybe you should wait a little while. It might be better if we save that money to help Sarah later." I let out a hollow laugh. "Save the money for Sarah?" She nodded, completely unashamed. "You understand, don't you? Your sister needs more support. She's not as ready as you are. You're strong, Sophia. You can manage on your own. So I don't deserve a chance." I clenched my fists, forcing my voice to stay calm. She didn't answer right away. Then she sighed. "Sophia, your stepfather worked hard for that money. It's family money, not just yours." I didn't need to ask to know that Sarah had never been asked to share anything in her life. Peter stepped into the room, his voice cutting through the tense air. "That money is for Sophia. That was my decision." My mother frowned. "Peter, I'm just thinking about both of our children's futures." "Sophia is your child too," Peter emphasized every word. My mother fell silent. We all knew the truth. I had never been her child, the way Sarah was loved. I left home 2 months later, carrying only a small suitcase and a promise to myself I would never live there again. Marshall University opened up a new world. No more hearing my mother call me for chores. No more Sarah and her endless demands. For the first time in my life, I was free. I threw myself into my studies, worked 2 jobs to cover my expenses. I barely had time to think about my mother or Sarah, until the calls started coming. At first, the calls came from Peter. "Your mother is worried about you, Sophia. Come visit when you can." I knew he was trying to be a bridge between us, but I had no intention of going back. Then my mother started calling. At first it was just small talk, but soon she stopped pretending. "Sarah is struggling," she said, her voice tinged with blame. "She has no direction. She needs you to guide her. Your father and we can't get through to her." I knew exactly what she wasn't saying. "We need your help." After everything she had done, after placing Sarah above me in every way, I had learned to tune my mother out. I refused to come home that Christmas. Then for Sarah's birthday. While I kept moving forward, Sarah kept spiraling downward. When I finally visited the next summer, I barely recognized the sister my mother had always adored. Sarah was no longer the sweet little girl I once knew. She spent all day in her room, buried in pointless video games, surrounding herself with friends who did nothing but smoke and drink. Peter had tried to pull her out of that lifestyle. He had even offered her a job at his construction company, but my mother had been furious. "She's not meant for manual labor," my mother had shouted. "She's capable of so much more." Peter frowned. "More?" "Olivia, she does nothing. She's lazy and completely dependent on you." My mother's face turned red, her voice shaking. She just needs time, she's smart, she's just following her passion. I looked at Sarah. My sister sat on the couch, not even bothering to look up, scrolling through her phone without a care. I knew the truth. Sarah had no passion. She didn't care about her future. Because my mother had never made her take responsibility for anything. The argument ended the way they always did. My mother defending Sarah at all costs, while Peter could only sigh in defeat. And me? I stood up, grabbed my purse and said, "I have to go, I have work in the city." My mother looked at me, disappointment flashing in her eyes, but I didn't care anymore. I had chosen my path. And Sarah had chosen hers. The only difference was that her path led to a dead end. Peter passed away on a cold autumn morning. I got the call from my mother at 6 a.m., her voice so shaky I could barely understand her words. But she didn't need to say much. Just 2 words. Peter's gone. And I knew that one of the only people who had ever truly loved me was gone forever. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling so empty that I couldn't react right away. My heart clenched, but I didn't cry. I only thought about my mother, about Sarah, about the house I had left behind. And I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I flew home the next day. From a distance, I could already see that the house looked worse than ever. The front lawn, once neatly trimmed when Peter was alive, was overgrown and unkempt. The wooden fence was chipping, his truck was no longer parked in the driveway. As I stepped onto the porch, a cold, hollow feeling settled in my chest. My mother opened the door, her eyes swollen, her hair a tangled mess. She looked thinner than the last time I had seen her, as if grief had been eating away at her. But what unsettled me most was the way she looked at me, like I was a stranger. "Come in," she said, her voice dry and brittle. Inside, the air was thick and suffocating. Sarah lounged on the couch, eyes glued to her phone. She didn't bother to stand up, didn't acknowledge me, didn't even look like she was mourning. I clenched my fists, but forced my voice to stay even. "Are you okay, Mom?" She took a shaky breath. "How could I be okay? Peter is gone." Her voice cracked. "I don't know what to do, Sophia. I really don't." I wanted to hug her, to tell her that things would be okay. But I knew that wasn't true. Because from the moment Peter was gone, this family had been in free fall, with no one left to hold it together. I stayed for 3 days after the funeral. Peter had died of a heart attack while at work. He collapsed right there in his office. His co-workers didn't have time to call for help. His death left a void that couldn't be filled. Not just in my heart, but in every part of my mother's and Sarah's lives. Without Peter, the family's only source of income was gone. I didn't know how they would manage. Maybe my mother didn't know either. On the 3rd evening, I sat in the kitchen, quietly sipping a cup of hot tea, when my mother walked in, a stack of papers in her hands. She placed them on the table in front of me, her eyes clouded with exhaustion. "Sophia, I need your help." I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "Peter's savings aren't enough," she sighed. "I can't cover everything on my own. Sarah, she's not ready to take care of herself. I was hoping you could help, at least until things settle down." I let out a dry laugh. "Settle down? How, Mom? Sarah isn't in school. She doesn't work, she's not even trying to change. Do you think I'm going to support her for you?" My mother clenched her fists. "She's your sister, Sophia. You should help your family." I looked at her for a long time. Family? When have I ever truly been part of this family? I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but I can't." For the first time in years, my mother didn't argue. She just nodded, her eyes empty. "I understand." But she didn't. Because the moment I left that house, I heard from Aunt Linda that my mother had started selling Peter's belongings. It started with the small things. The old truck Peter had loved, gone, sold for a fraction of its worth. His carefully kept toolbox, disappeared. Then came the bigger things. Peter's antique watch, the one his father had given him as a young man, pawned. The beautiful furniture he had once taken pride in. One by one, vanishing from the house. All for Sarah. My mother couldn't bear to let my sister go without. She couldn't let her face the reality that life was no longer as easy as it used to be. And Sarah? She still sat there, in her darkened room, her face pale from too many sleepless nights playing games. She hadn't changed. My mother did everything to keep her comfortable. But in the process, she lost everything. I stopped answering my mother's calls. I never went back to that house. Everything I knew about them, I heard from Aunt Lina. "They're struggling, Sophia," she said in a phone call. "Your mother has sold nearly everything of value. All that's left is the house." I closed my eyes, feeling something unfamiliar rise inside me. Not sorrow, not regret, just a strange sense of relief. I had done everything I could, and now? I had let go. I didn't know what the future held for my mother and Sarah, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't return until my mother truly respected me. The call came on a Tuesday night, just as I was cleaning my apartment after a long day at the office. "Sophia, I need your help." I froze, phone pressed to my ear, a chill running down my spine. How long had it been since my mother last called me? "Help with what?" I asked, my voice turning cold. She let out a heavy sigh. "Money. I'm out of money." I closed my eyes and leaned back against my chair. I knew this was coming. Everything she had sold after Peter's death must have run out. That old house was the only thing left. And I knew my mother would never ask Sarah to take responsibility for anything. "How much do you need?" She hesitated. $1,500 a month? At least until I can figure things out. I let out a dry laugh. "Figure things out? How, Mom? Sarah still doesn't have a job, does she?" A long silence stretched between us. Then her voice lowered, though there was still a hint of irritation. "She's looking. She just hasn't found the right fit yet." I laughed, not bothering to hide the sarcasm in my tone. "Sarah is 26, she's never held a real job. When are you going to admit that she has no intention of being independent?" "Sophia, don't talk about your sister that way," my mother snapped. "She just needs more time. She's more sensitive than you. She's not as strong as you. You have a career, a stable life. You can help, can't you?" I could. The real question was, did I want to? But no matter what, I couldn't bring myself to completely abandon her. "Fine, I'll send the money," I said, and even I didn't fully understand why I agreed. My mother immediately relaxed, thanking me over and over, promising that it was only temporary. I knew she was lying, but I still set up an automatic transfer every month. $1,500. Enough to upgrade my apartment. Enough to travel. Enough to do so many things for myself. But instead I was paying to support someone who refused to grow up. Time passed in silence for a year. Every month, I watched $1,500 leave my account without so much as a thank you in return. When I called home, my mother only talked about Sarah, as if she were the center of the universe. "Sarah is trying, you know. She's working on some really promising online projects. Sarah has a boyfriend now, a really great guy. He might help her grow her career." But every time I visited, I saw the same Sarah, still glued to a screen, still leeching off my mother, still with no plans for her future. I expected nothing different. But I never imagined the truth would be worse than I thought. I found the will on a Sunday when I decided to visit unannounced. The house looked worse than ever. The floors were covered in trash, the kitchen was cluttered with empty pizza boxes, and Sarah was sprawled out on the couch, eyes glued to her phone. "Where's Mom?" I asked. Sarah shrugged, not even looking up. "In her room." I walked straight to my mother's bedroom. When I opened the door, I found her sitting on the bed, pen in hand, a stack of papers in front of her. "What are you doing?" I asked, my eyes catching the words, "Last Will and Testament," printed at the top of one of the pages. She flinched, hurriedly trying to cover it up. But I was faster. I grabbed the document, my eyes scanning the lines. And when I reached the end, it felt like something inside me had been crushed. Everything, the house, the remaining assets, was being left to Sarah. There wasn't a single mention of me. Not a single thing was mine. I lifted my head and met my mother's gaze. Care to explain this? My mother bit her lip, then let out a sigh. Sophia, I know you won't need it. You have your own life, you can take care of yourself. But Sarah is different. She needs a place to stay, a safe place. I just want to make sure she never has to worry about the future. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you not think I'm your child too? She stayed silent. I stepped closer. Say it. Have you ever truly loved me? She didn't look away. No more lies to cover up the truth. She looked at me, more honest than she had ever been before, and said, Not as much as Sarah. I never loved you as much as I loved her. You were always too independent, too strong. But Sarah needed me. She was better than you in every way. The pain hit like a punch to the chest. I had always known my mother favored Sarah. But I never thought she would say it so plainly. My fists clenched, every part of me screaming to say something, to yell, to fight back, to demand fairness. But instead, I just smiled. An empty, hollow smile. Thank you for finally being honest. I set the will down on the bed, turned around, and walked away. I didn't look back. I had spent my whole life chasing my mother's approval. But now, I was done. She still hadn't accepted a daughter like me. I left my mother's house that day without a single glance back. Sitting in my car, my grip tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Her last words echoed in my head. I never loved you as much as Sarah. You were always alone, but she was always better than you. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel sadness or anger. I unlocked my phone, opened my banking app, and went to the automatic transfer section. $1,500 a month. For over a year I had been supporting them, receiving nothing but disregard in return. I pressed cancel payment without hesitation. It was done. I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, pressed down on the gas, and drove away from that old road. This time, I knew I would never come back. I had expected my mother's reaction, but she was worse than I thought. Less than a day after stopping the payments, my phone buzzed non-stop with missed calls and messages. Mom, Sophia, what's wrong with the bank account? The money didn't come in this month. Mom, did you forget? Maybe it's a system error. Can you resend it right away? I need it. Mom, answer me now. I didn't respond. 3 days later, the messages changed in tone. Mom, are you really this selfish? Are you just going to let your mother and sister starve? Sarah, what the hell are you doing? You know Mom needs that money. Stop acting like you're better than her. I sighed, scrolling through the dozens of messages before blocking both of their numbers. I was done with their manipulations. But my mother didn't stop. She started messaging me on Facebook, leaving comments on my Instagram, even emailing me with dramatic subject lines. I'm struggling. Do you really not care? Sophia, you're heartless. Sarah has been crying because of you. You'll regret this when I'm gone. I didn't finish reading. I simply blocked all her accounts. 3 weeks later, Sarah reached out through an unknown number. Do you have 5 minutes? Her voice was cold. I was silent for a moment before replying. Make it quick. Sarah scoffed. You can't do this to Mom. You can't just walk away from your responsibility like this. I gripped my phone tighter, but my voice remained calm. I'm not walking away from responsibility, Sarah. I'm just stopping people from taking advantage of me. Taking advantage? Mom raised you your whole life. You owe her, Sophia. I laughed. Mom raised me? No, Sarah, I raised myself since I was 8. What about you? Have you ever worked a single day in your life? Silence. I continued. If Mom needs money, you can get a job. Like an adult. Mom can't work anymore. She's struggling, she shouted. Not my problem. My response was blunt. Sarah's voice turned sharp. You'll regret abandoning your family. I smirked. Family? I never really had one. And then I hung up. 3 days later, I received one final message from my mother. I will miss you. No apology, no remorse. Just one last attempt to make me feel guilty. I felt nothing. 6 years passed since I left that house and cut all ties. I built a whole new life. A small home with a lovely garden, a stable job, and most importantly, the peace I had always longed for. No more guilt-tripping messages, no more demanding calls, no longer feeling like a shadow in my own family. I had learned to let go, to live better, to help those who truly needed it. But then, on a quiet winter afternoon, while sitting in my favorite cafe, my phone suddenly rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. But something made me pick up. "Sophia, it's Mom." I froze. How long had it been since I last heard her voice? "I'm sorry." 2 words, spoken slowly, heavily, as if she had carried them for years. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I was too blind, too stubborn. I lost you." Her voice cracked. "And I almost lost Sarah, too." I frowned. "Sarah?" She took a deep breath before continuing. "She left after the money ran out. She lost everything, had to survive on her own. But then she realized she couldn't live like that forever. She changed, Sophia. She's working now." I was silent. I never thought I'd hear my mother admit that Sarah needed to grow up too. "I miss you so much," she whispered, her voice weak. "If possible, I'd like to see you one more time." I could refuse. I could hang up and continue the life I had built for myself. But a part of me, the part that still remembered Peter, the part that still wished my family could change, told me I should go back. I took a deep breath. "Mom, I'll come visit." The next day, I drove back to the old house, the place I once swore I would never return to. The house looked familiar, yet something felt different. The garden was tended, the porch was cleaner, and the windows were no longer covered in dust. There were signs of change. My mother opened the door, and I barely recognized her. She looked much older. Deep lines etched across her face, but her eyes no longer held the same distance as before. "Come in." I stepped into the living room, and the biggest surprise was waiting for me. "Sarah." She looked at me with eyes I had never seen before. No arrogance, no entitlement. "Hey," she said. Her voice lacked the indifference it once had. I nodded, taking a seat across from her. Silence stretched between us until my mother finally spoke. "Sarah has a job now, Sophia," she said, her voice a mix of pride and emotion. I turned to my sister. "What are you doing?" Sarah gave a small smile. "Accounting for a small company. It's nothing glamorous, but I'm taking care of myself. And I help Mom too." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" She nodded. "I know you don't believe me. But after you left, I realized I couldn't keep living off other people. I used to think Mom would always take care of me, but then I understood that she couldn't do it forever. When you cut ties, I was furious. But later, I realized you were right." I looked at my mother. She lowered her head, wringing her hands together. "I was wrong, Sophia, wrong with both of you. I never taught Sarah how to grow up, and I let you carry too much on your own. And because of my blindness, I lost you." I sat in silence, letting her words sink in. "Can you forgive me?" I looked at the two women before me. The mother who had once been cold and selfish. The sister who had once been lazy and irresponsible. But they were no longer the same people I had left behind 6 years ago. I had waited for this apology my entire life. And now that it had come, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I stood up, walked over to my mother and gently embraced her. "I forgave you a long time ago." She broke down in my arms, and Sarah sat there, her eyes red with emotion. We couldn't change the past. But we could rebuild the future. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be hard days, misunderstandings, and moments when the past resurfaced like an unhealed wound. but this time we would try together. For the first time in years, I felt like family truly meant family. And that was what mattered most. Sophia's story is not just a family tragedy but a profound lesson on self-worth and personal boundaries. Sometimes, the ones we love most are the ones who manipulate us the most, and sacrifice is not always met with love or gratitude. Sophia learned that family is not just about blood ties. It's about being respected and valued. In reality, many people find themselves trapped in toxic relationships. But, like Sarah, we all have a choice, to be used or to take control of our own lives. What do you think about Sophia's story? If you were in her position, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional real-life stories about family, relationships, and life lessons. I never thought the day would come when I'd be kicked out of my own hotel by my own family. Right in the middle of blaring music and laughter from a lavish party named after my little sister. Right in the grand lobby of Somerset, the luxury hotel I spent 10 years building, security approached me, looked me straight in the eye and said seriously, "Sorry, Miss Savannah, but we've been instructed to ask you to leave the event area." I thought they were joking. But then I turned around and saw my mother raising a glass to toast Saren's birthday with a proud smile, while my sister stood on stage like a star. I heard my sister's voice echo through the microphone, shouting, "Don't let anyone not on the guest list ruin my party, especially that stranger who's been lurking near the buffet." Yes, that stranger was me, Savannah Hale, the woman who laid every brick in this hotel, who stayed up endless nights chasing investors, who bargained down to the last dollar with vendors. And now I was being thrown out of the very place I'd built, from the ground up, by a sister 8 years younger, who had done nothing but take selfies and demand everything under the sun. It all started a week ago, when I got back in town after a business trip to Seattle. I managed remotely, but Somerset had never left my mind. It wasn't just property, it was flesh and blood, a dream I traded my youth to build. I returned just in time for Saren's birthday, my half-sister, the princess of the Hale family. My mom had sent me a short message. "Make it back by the weekend, we're having a family dinner. Saren's throwing a little party." I thought it would be a cozy family meal, like every year. I was far too naive. That day, when I stepped into Somerset, I couldn't believe my eyes. The grand lobby, usually reserved for high-end conferences or elegant weddings, was decorated like a Hollywood gala. Crystal chandeliers, red carpet, a glittering gold backdrop spelling out Saren, a 90-foot champagne table, and a sound system worth tens of thousands blasting upbeat music. I stopped at the front desk, ready to ask what was going on, when the receptionist, someone I had personally interviewed and hired 2 years ago, pointed toward the main ballroom, looking confused. "I thought you had approved them to rent the entire ground floor for today." I wandered in like I was sleepwalking. Everyone was dressed to the nines. Relatives, family friends, even people I hadn't seen in over a decade. And they all looked at me, strangely. No one greeted me. No one asked about my trip or the business. They looked at me like I didn't belong. That was when I heard Saren giggling from the stage. She was taking selfies with my mom and my stepfather Peter in front of a 3-tiered birthday cake shaped like the Somerset Hotel. I hadn't even taken a step forward before security blocked me. I stared at him, speechless. He only bowed slightly and said softly, "I'm sorry, Miss Hale, but your mother asked us not to let anyone disrupt the celebration today." I was stunned. Trying to stay calm, I turned to my mother. "Mom, what is going on here? Why didn't anyone say anything to me? Who approved using the hotel without asking me?" My mother smiled, completely unbothered. "Oh, Savannah. I thought you knew. We all discussed it already. This is Saren's 25th birthday, her biggest event of the year. And I'm sure you don't mind covering the costs for the family. After all, Somerset is yours." I stared at her like she was a stranger. $150,000. That's the number I overheard when Saren was talking to the event planner as I passed by the service area. She'd hired a band, elite servers, a celebrity chef from New York, and a professional event company that handles A-listers. All of it, without ever running it by me. And my entire family knew. None of them thought it was wrong that I, Savannah Hale, the founder of Somerset, was being sidelined from a luxury party thrown right inside my own home. Worse, they just assumed I'd foot the entire bill, no questions asked, no thank you, no permission. I stood there, surrounded by glittering lights and party noise, but it felt like I'd just been stripped bare in front of the world. I wasn't angry about the money. I wasn't hurt by being kicked out. My heart broke, because my own family treated me like I was invisible. I remember that awful evening so clearly, just 3 days before the birthday that evicted the owner took place. Family dinner at my mom's house always reeked of Chanel perfume, and the kind of sugar-coated manipulation only someone skilled in emotional warfare could deliver. I came because she said there was something important the whole family needed to decide together. I was foolish enough to think it was a sincere invite from a loving family. Just a few minutes after the salad was served, before it even got cold, Saren cleared her throat and stood up like the CEO of an entertainment empire. "Everyone," she said, swirling a glass of red wine, eyes sparkling, not from emotion but from the chandelier lights bouncing off her glitter-coated eyelids. "This year I want a birthday party that's a little more extravagant. None of that boring stuff like last year. I want something Kardashian level." I didn't even have time to react before Peter, my stepfather, burst out laughing. "So the girl wants to be the next Kylie, huh?" Saren pretended to be modest. "Oh, stop it, Dad. I'm not as ambitious as Kylie, but Somerset is the perfect place to make it happen. Isn't it?" I frowned. "Somerset is a hotel, not a film set. If you want to host something, you need to book it and talk to the manager." "Oh, Savannah," my mom cut in, her voice as sweet as watered-down syrup. "You're always so uptight about rules. Your sister just wants a memorable 25th birthday party." Saren smiled, twirling her phone in her hand like she was about to drop a bomb. "Actually, I've already booked everything," she said, as casually as if she were ordering pizza. "Decorations, sound system, the chef, the guest list. And the event company has been working with Somerset's manager since last week." "You didn't know?" I felt my blood rush to my ears, burning hot. "You booked my hotel for a party and didn't even ask me?" "Oh, like you ever have time to be asked," she snapped. "You're always flying off for business trips, meeting fancy clients. All I wanted was a party, and it's not like you use your money for anything else, right?" The room went silent for a second, then my mom let out a soft sigh, full of implication. "Saren has a point. You've made it, Savannah. You should learn to give a little." I turned to her, hoping to see some support, or at least fairness. But she just looked at me with cold indifference, as if I were selfish for not letting my spoiled sister tear up the hotel for her Instagram backdrop. Peter chimed in with that holier-than-thou tone I hated most. "The wealthy should be generous, sweetheart. No one's asking you to throw the party. Just let them use the space. And maybe cover a little for the family." "A little?" I couldn't hold it in, I laughed. "That little is $120,000, right? Or $150,000 if you include the DJ and live band." Silence. No one denied it. My mother gave a slight nod, as if it were perfectly reasonable. I slumped into my chair, gripping the napkin in my hand. "So this is the plan? Use me like a walking credit card? And turn me into a stranger in my own life?" Saren flipped her hair, coldly. "You're being dramatic. You're helping me. What's wrong with that? Or do you think money makes you better than us?" I looked around the table. No one spoke up for me. Not a single sympathetic look. Just a few awkward blinks, and some guilty nods. That was the moment I realized. To them I was no longer Savannah, the girl who studied late into the night, who struggled through every step of building a business, who gave up every vacation to create Somerset. I was just a living ATM, a cash machine with the same last name and the wrong to ever say no. They didn't need me. They needed my wallet. And the worst part was, they thought that was completely fair. That night, I drove home in a blur of rage and heartbreak. The streetlights blurred past like slashes through my memories. They didn't see my pain. And honestly, they didn't care. Monday morning, I had just stepped into my office on the 10th floor of Somerset when my assistant Haley rushed over with a worried look on her face. "Savannah, have you checked Instagram this morning?" I looked up, frowning. "What happened?" Haley handed me her phone. The screen lit up with a 15-minute story from Saren, just enough to turn my normal day into a living nightmare. The video showed a corner of Somerset's lounge, the exact spot where I usually worked in the morning. It zoomed in on me having breakfast alone. Black coffee, open laptop, my hair neatly tied up, wearing a plain white shirt. My face calm, slightly tilted like I was reading a financial report. The story had a sarcastic music overlay, and bold text splashed across the screen. "Billionaire CEO living like a front desk clerk. Neat, plain and seriously boring. Plain Jane. Vibes savage. Vienna. No drama." It felt like someone slapped me in the face. Not because of the video, but because the one who posted it was my sister, Saren Hale, with over 300,000 followers. "When did she post this?" I asked, my voice icy cold. "About an hour ago, and it's already got nearly 50,000 views." I collapsed into my chair, gripping the phone tightly. As I scrolled through the comments and replies attached to the story, I saw familiar names. Old friends, industry partners, even a few influencers who had once collaborated with Somerset, dropping likes, laughing emojis, or reposting the video with cruel jokes. Savannah is the definition of having it all, but living like she's got nothing. Maybe she's doing ascetic meditation to cleanse her family karma. Wait, who owns Somerset again? Looks like an assistant borrowing her boss's office. I'm not someone who's easily hurt by social media. I've been criticized for turning down a multi-million-dollar liquor brand deal on ethical grounds. I've taken heat for shutting Somerset down for 2 weeks to upgrade safety systems. I've faced public backlash before. But never, not once, had it come from my own blood. I didn't post anything. I didn't clap back. I didn't explain. I just turned off my phone, stood up, shut my office door, and for the first time in years, sat in silence for more than 10 minutes. My mind felt like it was splintering, not from humiliation, but from facing a brutal truth. Saren no longer saw me as her sister. She saw me as a tool, a joke, a stepping stone to elevate her own image. This wasn't just a petty squabble, not some silly younger sibling moment or harmless online joke. No. This was a deliberate attack. A silent declaration of war. She wanted to make me a public laughingstock, to damage my image in the eyes of partners and clients, to make me seem small in her glittery world. A gentle knock on the door. Haley stepped in, holding a cup of hot tea. She placed it on my desk and said softly, "You don't have to do anything right now, but if you want, I can draft a formal response. Or call the lawyer." I shook my head slowly. "No, Haley, not yet. At least, not yet." My silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Because I knew, if I fell into this emotional trap, she'd win. The version of Savannah Hale that Saren was trying to build, a dull, outdated woman no one cared about, would only be reinforced if I reacted exactly the way she expected. No, I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. Instead, I started rebuilding a wall in my mind. A wall of silence. Not to hide, but to prepare. I needed time. A plan, and most importantly, confirmation of what I had always suspected. This family never truly saw me as one of their own. They only saw me as a source of profit. The tea was still warm in my hand, but my heart was growing cold. Like a machine rebooting. I was no longer Savannah, the eldest sister who gave in. Who always thought, maybe they didn't mean to hurt me. I was the CEO of Somerset. And if they wanted war, I wasn't going down without a fight. I looked out the glass window. The city was still bustling, loud, alive. But in my head, only one word remained. And no more bowing, no more giving in, no more waiting to be understood. They started this war, and I would be the one to end it. Make them regret it. 3 days after the humiliating story spread across social media, my mother showed up at Somerset without warning. She wore an ivory Chanel suit, oversized sunglasses hiding half her face, and her heels clacked across the marble floor like a summons from hell. The front desk called upstairs to tell me, "Mrs. Beverly Hale is requesting to see the CEO immediately." I knew it wasn't good. I told Haley to send her up. Less than 2 minutes later, the door swung open. My mother walked in like it was her own boardroom. No greeting, no asking if I was busy. She placed a cream-colored envelope on my desk. Didn't even sit down. "Take a look at this. It's the official budget for Saren's birthday party." I looked up at her. "Budget? I thought I made it clear. I don't approve of any of this." She ignored my tone, pulled off her sunglasses, and shook her head like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Don't be dramatic, Savannah. Everything's already been arranged." I pulled the paper out of the envelope and unfolded it. Just as I suspected, a professionally printed budget sheet, complete with the event company's logo, listing every category in detail: lighting, sound, catering, decor, VIP guest list. And at the very bottom, printed in bold red ink, "Payer, Savannah Hale, $150,000, confirmed." I gripped the edge of the paper, my voice hoarse. "Who confirmed this? I never signed anything. I didn't send an email. I didn't approve a single cent of this." My mother sat down and let out a theatrical sigh. "Savannah, you always make everything so complicated. This was already planned from the beginning. We talked about it at dinner last week." "You mean the dinner where everyone ganged up on me?" I said through gritted teeth. "You call it a set plan when the person paying for it wasn't even asked? You think that's fair?" She shrugged. "You're the most responsible person in this family. You always have been. You have the money, the resources. Helping out your family once in a while. Is that really so much to ask?" I laughed, but there was no joy in it. "No, Mom, this isn't helping. This is exploitation. This is coercion. This is treating me like an ATM with no say." She pushed her chair back and stood up. "Don't say things like that, Savannah. I just thought you'd do the right thing like you always do. And Saren? She needs this party to build her image. She's an influencer, you know that. Social media means everything to her." I narrowed my eyes. "And what about me? I don't deserve dignity? I don't deserve respect? She humiliated me in front of thousands of people, and now you show up with an invoice for her party like nothing ever happened?" My mother was silent for a few seconds. Then she leaned down closer to me, her voice softening into that tone I knew too well, the one she always used when she wanted me to give in to Saren. "Savannah, you're the older sister. You're the successful one. You have to be generous. Those who have, give. Those who don't, receive. That's what family is." I looked her straight in the eyes. Real family means sharing, not using. It means gratitude, not entitlement. And if you still consider this a family, then you should ask me, instead of making decisions for me. She stepped back, her face starting to harden. "You're speaking like a stranger. You don't understand. I just wanted everything to go smoothly. No one needs drama right now." "Drama?" I scoffed. "Drama is when you treat me like a cash machine. Drama is pretending Saren's just being playful while she publicly shames me, and you can't even speak up to defend me." A tense silence stretched between us. Finally, she gathered her bag and slipped her sunglasses back on. "Fine. I've done my part. If you want to fight, go ahead and fight. But remember this, Savannah. Don't think you'll always win." I didn't respond. I just watched her walk away, like a failed politician backing out of her own power play. The budget sheet still sat on my desk. Bright red, sharp, cold. It wasn't just a number. It was proof. Of assumption. Of dismissal. Of a kind of exploitation that had been bred into this family for far too long. I folded the paper, slipped it back into the envelope, placed it in a drawer, and locked it. Not because I was afraid, but because I was waiting for the right moment to open it in front of them all and force them to see the raw truth they'd been pretending not to see for years. One day after my meeting with my mother, I received an email from the address, sarenhale@haleteam.com. Subject: Sponsorship Agreement, Official Confirmation. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I made myself a strong black coffee, shut the office door, and sat down like a CEO about to review a crisis report. When I opened the attached PDF file, a bitter taste rose in my throat. The contract came from a luxury event planning firm based in Los Angeles, 14 pages long, drafted by a professional legal team. Clause 3, marked in red bullet points, clearly stated. Primary guarantor: Savannah Hale. Responsible for full payment of the event: Saren Hale. 25 and fabulous. With a total budget of $152,460. Taxes and fees included. The contract becomes effective upon guarantor's signature on page 14. On the signature line, my name had already been typed in Times New Roman, with the space for signing left blank. A subtle, calculated, and shameless push. No phone call. No request. No explanation. She didn't need to ask, because she was sure I'd stay silent. Just like always. I closed my eyes for a few seconds, then reopened them. This time not as the offended older sister, but as an executive, managing a PR crisis. I didn't get angry. I didn't text. I didn't call. I started documenting. I created a new folder on my computer, named Dossier_Hale. Inside I made subfolders: emails, contracts, Instagram stories, expense evidence, communication logs, Somerset staff interactions. I extracted Saren's Instagram story, saved it in its original video format with screenshots. I asked Somerset's in-house legal team to verify all documents and track all communications between Saren and the event planning company, especially any emails that might contain forged approvals from me. Haley, my assistant, was tasked with compiling the entire timeline of the event booking process at the hotel. I wanted to know who signed off on the contract, from which account, and whether any internal email had been forged or manipulated. I also asked the IT department to review all security camera footage, especially any times Saren had visited Somerset in the past month, and all meetings held secretly without my invitation. And then I did something I had never done before. I hired a personal attorney. Not the company's lawyer, but a specialist in financial disputes within families. Someone cold, sharp, and not afraid to take relatives to court if necessary. "What angle do you want to take?" he asked in our first meeting, voice low and firm. I looked up at him, unblinking. "I want full legal authority to strike back. I'm not paying a cent for that party. And I want everyone trying to exploit me to know they picked the wrong person." I didn't go on social media to explain myself, even though the humiliating story was still up. I didn't send Saren a single accusatory message, though I could have ended her with one sentence. I chose silence, but not the submissive silence of the past. This time, it was silence, to prepare for the takedown. 3 days later, I received a second email reminder from Saren. Says, "Did you sign the contract yet? They're waiting to confirm with the DJ from New York. Don't make me cancel the show, okay? Love you?" No subject. No professionalism. No grammar. And most importantly, no respect. I forwarded the email directly to my lawyer with a note. Add to file under financial manipulation. Prepare legal refusal strategy. I wasn't afraid they'd call me stingy, selfish, or unwilling to sacrifice for the family. Because the truth is, I had sacrificed for 15 years. Sacrificed my personal career to support the family business after my father passed. Sacrificed my weekends to clean Mom's house while Saren vacationed with her boyfriend. Sacrificed my pride when I was called boring online. But not anymore. My generosity had expired. And I was rewriting the contract of my life. without them in it. Saturday, April 22, 6:45 p.m. Somerset's grand lobby shimmered with lights, packed with guests in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos. Above them, the custom-made crystal chandelier I commissioned from Italy sparkled with 1,000 glints of light, casting a glow over a space now consumed by a party titled Saren Hale 25 and Fabulous. She had actually done it. No permission. No legal agreement. Saren entered the party like a social media goddess. Red slit dress, surrounded by her personal crew, as local entertainment reporters swarmed like flies. My mother sat near the stage, face caked in thick makeup, holding a champagne glass like she was hosting a Hale family coronation. No one knew I was there too. And I didn't come to celebrate. I didn't wear a glittering evening gown, just a tailored black velvet suit, clean lines and high collar. The kind that once landed me in Denver's best-dressed CEOs on a financial magazine. I slipped through the back corridor, the one I had designed myself to connect the boardroom to the breakfast kitchen without being seen. A few longtime staff recognized me and nodded with quiet respect. No one stopped me. Because everyone knew I was the only one who truly had authority here. 7:10 p.m. I stood at the edge of the ballroom, just dimly lit enough to go unnoticed, watching the crowd like an investor reviewing quarterly profits. Then they appeared, the Munro family. I recognized them instantly. Not just because of their wealth and influence, but because of the way they entered, composed, deliberate, and clearly assessing everything, from every smile to every glance. Mr. Munro, a real estate magnate, walked in with his wife and their son, who was currently dating Saren. They moved like they were inspecting the quality of a business acquisition. Saren rushed over to them, grabbing her boyfriend's arm and saying loud enough for everyone to hear, "Thank you, Munro family, for coming to my little party. Everything here at Somerset tonight was arranged by me. I wanted everyone to see I can host with real class." Arranged by her. I let out a soft laugh. Bitter enough to sting but calm enough to stay composed. And then, the moment came. A manager whispered something into Saren's ear, and her smile faltered. Just for a second. I stepped out from the shadows, walking directly toward the center of the room, just as the MC was about to announce Saren's coming-of-age speech. I raised my hand. "Excuse me, may I have a moment?" The entire ballroom turned to look. I stood tall, unflinching. Saren's eyes widened like she had just seen a ghost crawl out of a grave. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice calm but clear. "I'm Savannah Hale, CEO, and the sole legal owner of this hotel, Somerset." A wave of murmurs spread through the room. Saren froze. My mother's jaw dropped. Peter choked on his drink. And the Munro family? They started paying attention. Exactly as I intended. "As you can see, tonight's party is being held on my property," I continued. "However, there has been a misunderstanding. An individual, unauthorized, with no contract and no payment, has used this venue without permission and made false claims about ownership." I turned slightly toward the Munro family, nodding politely. "It is an honor to welcome your family to Somerset, and I want to assure you that every experience at this hotel adheres to the highest standards of both service and transparency." Mr. Munro, the man often referred to as a real estate shark, looked at me with a different expression now. He nodded, a small smile forming. "Very impressive, Miss Hale. Just how I like it. Clear, decisive, and in control." Saren's face turned bright red. She stammered, I just wanted it to be a surprise, and I thought everything was taken care of." "No," I replied, still calm. "You thought I would stay quiet, like I always did. But you forgot. Savannah Hale is no longer your walking wallet." My mother jumped to her feet. "Savannah, you're making a scene in front of everyone." I didn't look at her. I turned my back, leaving my final words hanging in the air like a strike to their cheap pride. "This party may continue. If the organizer agrees to pay the full amount under a legitimate contract within 24 hours. If not, Somerset will proceed with formal eviction and seek damages accordingly." Then I walked away, head high, never once looking back. Leaving behind the whispers, the stunned faces, and a party about to spiral into a PR nightmare. I didn't need to shout to be heard. I only needed the truth. And truth, spoken at the right moment, is the sharpest blade. The next morning the phone rang at 6:48 a.m. I hadn't slept, not out of regret, but because the adrenaline still hadn't left my veins after last night. The screen lit up. Dad. Peter Hale. I stared at the name for a few seconds before answering. Savannah. His voice came through the phone dry as desert wind. No emotion, just a soft-spoken command. Yeah? I replied flatly. Last night. Maybe you went a bit too far. I closed my eyes. Nailed it, word for word. Peter, if that's the only reason you're calling, then let's not waste each other's time. He sighed, that familiar, exhausting sigh I'd heard 100 times, every time I didn't behave the way the family wanted. Well, it was your sister's birthday week, wasn't it? You should consider everyone's feelings. Your mother's stressed, Saren cried all night. Why did you have to make it so dramatic? I clenched the phone tighter, lips curling into a cold smile. And what about my feelings? Or has this family never once thought those mattered? Silence. I thought he might say something decent. But instead, Savannah, don't blow this out of proportion. We're family. Things can be handled by talking, not by making a scene at a party. I laughed, short, bitter, straight to the bone. How many times have I talked to this family, Peter? When Saren humiliated me online. When Mom dropped off a contract demanding I pay. When I was kicked out of my own hotel. I talked. And everyone assumed. Assumed I'd endure. I assumed I'd stay silent. Assumed I was just a walking ATM. Don't use words like that, Peter snapped. Why not? I shot back. Isn't that exactly how this family treats me? Like an invisible support beam holding up this cheap illusion of unity. As long as it looks happy on the outside, no one cares how rotten it is underneath. You're going too far, Savannah. No, I'm finally thinking clearly, and for the first time in my life, I'm seeing everyone for who they truly are. I hung up. No tears, no need to cry. The anger had cooled, replaced by the calm resolve of someone who's seen enough, felt enough, and finally, decided to stop. I used to think, if I just tried a little harder, sacrificed a little more, they would see me. They'd appreciate me. Be grateful. But no. My family didn't want a Savannah who loved. They only wanted a Savannah who endured. And I'm not her anymore. I got dressed and headed down to the office floor. Somerset's staff were going about their work as usual, but something felt different. Every glance I got this morning held a deeper kind of respect, no longer just for the busy CEO, but for the woman who stood up for what was right. Haley followed me into the office with a hot cup of coffee and a tight-lipped smile. I heard about last night. Every detail. I looked at her. And I'm proud to work for someone like you. She placed the coffee on my desk. Family might be blood, but here, we see you as our leader. No one at Somerset believes you deserved to be treated like that. I paused. For the first time in months, I felt something loosen in my chest. Thank you, Haley, I said. No performance, no mask. I stepped out onto the office balcony, looking down at a city just beginning to wake. Sunlight spilled across the glass buildings. Everything kept moving, despite a family breaking, again. But I had no regrets. Because honestly, that family was never truly home. And from this moment on, I would stop trying to be the burden bearer. I would live my life on my terms, with freedom, dignity, and boundaries. No one would be allowed to cross them again just because we shared DNA. I took a sip of coffee. Warm sun, cool air. The first peace I'd felt in years. 3 days after that ridiculous birthday party, Somerset officially issued a contract termination notice for the event. Saren Hale, 25 and fabulous. The reason stated clearly, violation of terms, unauthorized use, and failure to remit payment by deadline. The event company immediately pulled down all photos, deleted the promotional posts, and sent an invoice directly to Saren, with a note. Responsible party for payment, event organizer, Saren Hale. And me? I just sat back, watching each domino fall. Like a chess player silently witnessing their opponent realize they've been checkmated. Saren called me, 7 missed calls. She texted. A storm of messages flipping between begging, accusing and pleading again. What are you doing? I lost my brand deal. You have money, just help me. If you let me take the fall, I'll tell the media you sabotaged me on purpose. I didn't reply. Not because I was scared, but because I no longer had any reason to talk to her. 2 days later, the hashtag Saren Scam Party started trending on Twitter. Several influencer guests had their bookings cancelled last minute because Somerset didn't allow the unauthorized event. A blogger known for exposing social media figures published a full breakdown. Behind the glitz was a cheap performance. Saren Hale, an influencer who lives off others' money. Even the ballroom was a lie. Saren's account was suspended for 3 days for spam and event misrepresentation. Brand partners began pulling ads. One major fashion label even announced it was reviewing its ambassador contract due to concerns over financial transparency. She called my mom. My mom called me. Savannah, you can't let your sister's reputation be destroyed like this. Help her. Just cover the bill, and this will all blow over. I put the phone on speaker, calmly said, Mom, some lessons have to be paid for. With personal collapse. This is one of them. I'm not saving anyone. I'm just done hurting myself. She went quiet. Then snapped. You're choosing to abandon your family. I smiled. No, Mom. Family abandoned me a long time ago. Now I'm just cleaning up the mess left behind by staying silent for too long. I hung up. For good. 2 weeks later, Somerset was named one of the top 5 boutique hotels for guest experience in the Western U.S. A week after that, I signed a long-awaited partnership deal with a luxury travel group from Japan, something I'd been working on for nearly 3 years. And me? I still wore my white button-down, drank my unsweetened black coffee, and had breakfast alone in the hotel lounge. The very corner Saren once mocked in her story. But this time, I didn't feel sad. I felt free. Free from the burden of being the good one in a family that only knew how to take. Free from guilt every time I said no. Free from the cycle of hope, disappointment, and despair. I ran into Jacqueline, my old college roommate, when she came to Denver for work. She looked me over, then laughed. You haven't changed at all, Savannah. Still minimal, still cool, and still intimidating. I shrugged. At least now, I don't let anyone treat my kindness like an all-you-can-eat buffet. That night, lying in my penthouse, I opened my laptop and typed a note to myself. Just a short one. But it summed up everything. Peace doesn't come from apologies. Peace comes when you start treating yourself like someone who matters. When you stop waiting for validation from people who were never willing to give it. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The city was still loud, still lit up, still crowded with life. But inside me, there was silence. Not bitterness. Not revenge. Just clarity. Like headlights slicing through the highway at midnight. I am Savannah Hale. And for the first time in my life, I don't need anyone else to acknowledge that. I know who I am. And that is enough. The story of Savannah Hale isn't just about reclaiming control over her life. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes, the ones who hurt you most, share your last name. Family shouldn't be a place of unconditional sacrifice. It should be built on respect and fairness. Peace doesn't come from someone else's apology. It comes the moment you stop enduring and start living according to your worth. True freedom begins the day you dare to set boundaries, even with those closest to you. What do you think about Savannah's decision? Was she too harsh? Or was it the only way to truly find herself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss the next emotional family story.